Statistically, humans are the most dangerous species on Earth to wild animals. We hunt them, we trap them, we pave over their homes and call it progress. Every wild animal with a functioning survival instinct should stay as far away from us as possible. So why did a humpback whale took a diver under its fin to hide her from a tiger shark? Why did a pod of dolphins form a protective circle around swimmers to block a great white? Why do elephants with snare wounds approach the exact vehicles that belong to the species that set the snare in the first place? Something's overriding millions of years of evolutionary common sense, and scientists still don't fully agree on what it is. Let's start with the most impossible rescue I could find. 2005, rural Ethiopia. 4 men drag her into the bush on her way home from school. A week passes. Villagers organize search parties but find nothing. Then, on the 7th day, they hear something strange coming from a clearing half a mile outside town. 3 wild lions, sitting calmly, watching over a terrified, exhausted little girl. The kidnappers are gone. Nobody knows when they ran or why. The lions don't move when the villagers approach. Police Sergeant Wundmu Wedash arrives on scene and later says the lions stood watch until humans got close enough to take over. Then they just walked back into the forest, like they'd finished the shift. Nobody trained those lions. Nobody had ever documented anything quite like it. And here's the part almost nobody mentions when they retell this story. We have no idea if those lions were protecting her or if something else entirely was happening. One wildlife expert offered a theory that stuck with researchers for years. A lion's brain is wired to respond to the sound of a distressed cub, and a terrified 12-year-old girl sobbing for a week straight might not sound all that different. If that's true, those lions weren't being heroic, they were being hijacked. An ancient parenting circuit misfired on the wrong species, and the kidnapped girl happened to be standing in the blast radius of extremely good luck. Which raises a question nobody wants to ask out loud. How many of these rescues are animals choosing to save us, and how many are just lucky accidents? Let's find out. December 2005, off the coast of California. A diver named James Mosquito gets a call. There's a humpback whale tangled in crab line near the Farallon Islands. When his team reaches her, she's wrapped in over 20 lines, hundreds of pounds of equipment dragging from her body. She's been pulled almost completely underwater, unable to surface for air. One flipper is bound so tight it's cutting into the skin. For about an hour, divers work underneath her with curved knives, cutting line after line, and this creature, the size of a school bus, just stays still. A whale that could kill every diver there with one flick of her tail does nothing. When the last line comes free, she doesn't swim away. She circles back. She nudges each diver gently with her nose, one at a time. Then she finally heads out to open water. That's not a one-off story. Off the coast of Hawaii, manta rays show up to dive sites with fishing hooks buried in their gill slits. Instead of fleeing, they slow down. They hover near a diver. Sometimes they flip onto their backs, holding completely still in a way they never do for anything else. Almost like they're presenting the injury. Dolphins do it too. Multiple cases of dolphins tangled in fishing line approaching boats and swimmers directly. In one case off Florida, a wild dolphin swam up to a group of snorkelers and stayed at the surface, motionless, until someone noticed the line wrapped around its fin and cut it loose. Okay, so maybe it's a marine animal thing. Big brains, social species, complex communication. Maybe they figured out that humans with boats sometimes mean help. Except it's not just happening in the ocean. Parts of Kenya and Zimbabwe, wildlife rangers start noticing something strange. Wild elephants with snare wounds are approaching vehicles, not running, not charging, just slowing their pace, standing within a few feet of a truck, behavior they show toward almost nothing else that moves on 4 wheels. Some of these elephants had been treated by rangers years earlier as calves. When they show up injured as full-grown adults, they come back to the same kind of vehicle, which means an elephant is doing something that shouldn't be possible. It's recognizing a type of human across years and deciding that this specific kind of human is worth the risk. In 2010, off the coast of New Zealand, a first seal pup leaps directly into it. A pod of orcas is circling nearby. The seal doesn't try to swim to shore where it would theoretically be safer. It goes straight for the one thing on the water the orcas can't follow. The seal isn't asking the human to fight off the predator. It's using the boat like terrain, like a rock it can climb onto in the middle of a hunt. So now we've got whales, dolphins, elephants, and seals all doing versions of the same impossible thing. They're approaching the most dangerous species on the planet and treating us like what exactly? A solution? A safe zone? Let's complicate this further. A pot-bellied pig named Lulu is inside a house when her owner collapses from a heart attack. The pig doesn't panic. She walks out to the road, lays down in the middle of it, and pretends to be dead. A driver stops to check on her. The second she has his attention, Lulu gets up and leads him straight to the house. A pig faked her own death to manipulate a human into helping. That's not instinct misfiring. That looks uncomfortably close to a plan. Then there's Mandy, a goat. Her owner falls in a field and can't move. Mandy spends 5 straight days lying on top of him to keep him warm. She lets him drink her milk to survive until help finally arrives. 5 days. On purpose. In 2014, a couple in Fort Lauderdale is asleep at 3:45 in the morning when their pet parrot starts screaming and slamming itself against the cage bars. A fire had broken out in the laundry room. The birds sounded the alarm before the smoke detector even went off. In a separate case, a parrot named Willie couldn't say much beyond a handful of learned phrases, but one of them happened to be fire. When flames broke out while a babysitter was occupied with a choking toddler in another room, Willie screamed that one word on repeat until someone came running. Okay, so domestic animals, fine. They've spent thousands of years around us. Maybe trust got bred into them somehow. But coal miners used to carry canaries underground until 1986. Not because the birds were disposable, because a canary's tiny lungs register poison gas long before a human ever would. And contrary to what most people assume, the birds weren't sacrificed. Miners built small resuscitation cages. The instant a canary collapsed, they'd seal it inside and flood it with oxygen to bring it back. The canary wasn't a martyr. It got rescued too, every single time. During World War II, a U.S. Army pigeon named G.I. Joe flew 20 miles in 20 minutes to stop a bombing raid on a village that friendly troops had already captured. The radios were down. That bird was the last option left. It arrived at the airbase just as the planes were warming their engines. There's an actual medal for this, the Dicken medal, created in 1943 for animal wartime gallantry. Pigeons have won it more than any other species combined. Only one cat has ever received it, a ship's cat named Simon. Wounded by shrapnel during a 101-day naval siege, he spent the entire standoff defending his crew's dwindling food supply from rats. Ship's cats were standard practice on vessels for centuries, not for sentiment, because unchecked rats at sea could destroy food stores and spread disease on a months-long voyage. It was a quiet, unglamorous kind of life-saving, going on for hundreds of years, long before anyone thought to give it a medal. So now we've got a pattern forming. Marine mammals, land mammals, birds, domestic animals, all of them doing some version of the same thing, keeping humans alive when they have absolutely no reason to do so. But here's where this stops being heartwarming. Through the 1990s, a veterinary drug given to cattle in India starts quietly wiping out the country's vultures. Almost nobody notices, because who mourns a vulture? Within a decade, over 95% of India's vultures are gone. And vultures had one job nobody thought to appreciate: cleaning up dead animal carcasses before anything else could get to them. With the vultures gone, feral dogs and rats move into that vacancy instead. Their populations explode, and rabies spreads right along with them. Researchers now estimate that roughly 100,000 additional human deaths happened every single year between 2000 and 2005 as a direct result of vultures disappearing. 100,000 people a year, killed by the absence of a bird most of us would call ugly and worthless. Something almost identical happened in Borneo in 1960. A campaign to spray DDT against malaria accidentally poisoned the local cats. The chemical killed insects. The dead insects took the geckos that ate them, and the dead geckos took the cats that ate the geckos. Without cats, the rat population exploded, tearing through food stores, threatening to spread disease across entire villages. The actual solution was loading cats into crates and parachuting them into the jungle. It's remembered today as Operation Cat Drop. A few dozen cats dropped by parachute specifically to undo a disaster humans had caused by removing cats in the first place. We didn't just fail to notice these animals were protecting us. We had to airlift them back in to fix what we broke. So maybe the question isn't just why do animals save humans, maybe it's how long have they been doing it without us even noticing. Let's go back to the weird ones. A hunter is caught outside overnight in brutal sub-zero cold. He wakes up the next morning to find 3 wild beavers curled up against his body, keeping him alive through a night that should have killed him. There's no evidence the beavers understood what they were doing. They were cold too. He was warm. Apparently, that was reason enough. In India, 2015, a man slips while climbing a tree. A wild rhesus macaque watching nearby lunges and grabs his leg mid-fall, almost certainly preventing a serious injury. No training, no bond, just a split-second reaction from an animal that had never met him. In California, 2012, a hiker is quietly watching a mother bear and her cub from a safe distance when a mountain lion attacks him from behind. The bear doesn't storm in out of loyalty. She fights the mountain lion off because the fight is happening inside her own territory. The hiker survives. The bear never once intended to be his bodyguard. She just happened to be defending the same 6 feet of forest he was bleeding in. Then there's the story that barely made international news. Misiones, Argentina, 2008. Police investigate a strange sound coming from a drainage ditch. They find a 1-year-old boy at the bottom of a gutter, alive, surrounded by 8 wild cats. Nobody knows how long he'd been out there in the freezing cold, but the cats had arranged themselves around him like a living blanket. When a policewoman got close enough to reach him, several of the cats hissed and spat at her, defending him the way they'd defend one of their own litter. Investigators believed the boy had survived partly on scraps the cats scavenged and left near him, that they'd been licking the dirt off his skin the same way they'd groom a kitten. Whatever those cats thought that child was, for however many nights he lay in that ditch, it was theirs to protect. So what's actually happening here? Let's be honest, animals aren't moral philosophers. They're not sitting somewhere weighing the sanctity of human life before deciding to help. Most of the time, when an animal saves a human, something else is happening underneath, and the rescue is just a side effect. Sometimes it's an instinct built for one purpose that gets triggered by the wrong target. The lions in Ethiopia might have heard a crying cub that didn't exist. Sometimes it's a territorial reflex that happens to land in your favor. The bear defending her space, the cats defending their baby. Sometimes it's reciprocal altruism, the idea that helping another creature can eventually pay off if the relationship lasts long enough. Elephants remembering the humans who treated them as calves. And sometimes it's coevolution that nobody planned. When a dog stares into your eyes, both of your brains release oxytocin, the exact hormone that bonds a parent to a newborn. Nobody designed that. It just happened, generation after generation, until trust became chemistry. But here's the thing that doesn't fit neatly into any of those explanations. The animals that do this aren't random. Whales, dolphins, elephants, even the cats in Argentina and the pigs and goats on farms, they all share something specific. Long lifespans, complex memory, strong social bonds, the capacity to recognize individuals across years. These aren't randomly distributed traits. They cluster almost exclusively in the species we already suspect of having the richest inner lives on the planet. The same animals that grieve their dead, that comfort injured group members, that appear to recognize themselves in mirrors. Maybe that's the real pattern. Not that wild animals understand humans are uniquely capable of helping them, but that the same cognitive machinery that lets an elephant mourn a dead calf or a dolphin protect an injured podmate occasionally generalizes outward toward a species they have every evolutionary reason to fear. Let me take you back to where this started. September 2000, San Francisco Bay. Kevin Hines is 19 years old. He's just jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, 25 stories down. Water hits him like concrete. Somehow, he's still alive, but his back is broken. His vertebrae are shattered. His legs won't move. He's going under. Nobody's coming. And then, something brushes against his legs in the dark water. A sea lion, circling him, nudging him, keeping his head above the surface for 20 minutes until a boat finally reaches him. We'll never know what that sea lion was thinking. We'll never know if it recognized Kevin as something worth saving, or if some other instinct entirely was firing in its brain. But something out there, something with no stake whatsoever in his survival, decided to hold him up anyway. That's not proof that animals love us, but it's proof of something. And whatever that something is, it's been quietly happening for a lot longer than we've ever bothered to notice. We spent most of our history assuming we were the only species capable of choosing to help a stranger, the only ones with anything resembling conscience or sacrifice. And the whole time, underneath us, beside us, circling beneath our surfboards and curling up against our freezing bodies in the dark, something else was quietly making that same choice over and over, without ever asking to be thanked for it.